All right, what's going on, everyone? This is Eric Stewart from the Fishing Fanatics podcast. And today, I'm joined with John Holtz, who in 2022 competed in the Bassmaster Open, and also was a huge bass fan, as I saw on some things on the Bassmaster, and the things about his blog. And we'll talk about that a little bit about that in this podcast. But I'm excited to have John on because I actually met him at ICast at the Bass Reaper Bait Co. booth down there, and I think he's got a cool story to kind of share with our listeners. So, how you doing, John?
Eric, thanks, man. I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be on with you, and I've watched you for a long time, so it's kind of cool to be on the other end of things. But very very happy to be here with you.
Absolutely, John. It's good to have you here. And let's start all the way back at the beginning, maybe growing up a little bit. What was it like for you to get into fishing? What's that kind of story behind what got you
Sure.
hooked in the fishing?
Well, here's the thing, and just so you kind of know, and it kind of goes to for present day Claire de Back. I in my real job, I'm a seventh grade teacher now, and I see these kids right now who they're all ate up with fishing, which is great. I love it, but just the avenues they have with it, to me when I was a kid, it was just for the fun of it. I mean, there was no thought of, oh, college, or, oh, I could do this or that. I did have a cousin who got involved in some pretty high level crappie tournaments around the area. So I kind of knew that that was out there as far as, there was an ability to be in the fishing world and have a job in the fishing world. But I didn't really get it other than, to me, the most professional fishing stuff that was out there were people like Jimmy Houston, who, when he'd release a video and, a Roland Martin that you'd catch on, I don't know if it was an ESPN something or what he was involved in at that time, but I remember as a kid looking at that and thinking, man, these guys, they're on TV doing what I enjoy doing. And I think somewhere within my head that melded and said, well, I want to do that someday. And so I remember as a kid, my parents had still have actually, the house they brought me home to is still their house. And they've got like a 2 acre pond there. And man, when I was out there, it was spinner baits, and I mean, every spinner bait I threw, I was Jimmy Houston. And I can remember in my head, like, looking and paying attention to the old style trolling motor that Jimmy Houston had on his Ranger, and trying to manipulate my leg around that trolling motor the way he did, and underhand pitch like he did, and just I to me, and this probably tells you towards my very weird mental status, but to me, man, when I was out there on the water, I had a cameraman in back, and I was Jimmy Houston, and I was out there, I was chucking and winding, and that was where, like, in my head, maybe a fishing career could go. But really, just summers, vacations were fishing. We spent a lot of time on Table Rock Lake. Once I got into high school, we started going up to Canada a little bit, and just my passion for fishing just kept growing. And then about the time I got married, which we're coming up on almost 11 years, I was working at Bass Pro part time, just because early on in teaching, you got to love teaching, because you're not going to get rich doing it. You're just not. I was taking on a secondary job at Bass Pro, and I'm not sure if we were exactly married yet or not, but my either fiance or wife, one of the two, Jamie, she just kind of said, well, you're always you're always in at Bass Pro talking to these guys about how to catch fish. Why aren't you out there doing it yourself? And we kind of came up with the plan of, well, if I could get some, low-level sponsorships and get some folks to help pay my way, I was going to try to go tournament fishing. And that's pretty much what I've been doing for the last 11 years, is really just trying my best to just stay with that love of the sport, but kind of take it to that next level as much as I can.
Now, that's awesome how you frame that too, because I think it's interesting. Like around me in the Philadelphia area, it's a lot of guys just fishing, kind of bass fishing, and then they kind of hear about your Bill Dances, or around me it's Mike Iaconelli too, and those kind of guys, and they start watching them, and it's like, oh, like I didn't even know professional bass fishermen were like a thing until I was like 16.
Yeah,
So it's cool to see like you
sorry,
growing up. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, it cut up a little bit, but yeah, you're right. I mean, I really did. I kind of grew up with that thought of, like, almost, I wouldn't say the personality superseded the fishing, but it was certainly right there along the same level.
Absolutely. And then working in Bass Pro Shop part time and also doing your thing as a teacher too. That kind of leap of faith into tournament fishing, did that start on the local level, or did you just kind of branch out from there, or how did that kind of look?
You, you know, my again, the cousin who I spoke about earlier, his name's Mike. Mike is, when I was a kid, he kind of got me involved in a couple. We did a couple like little Thursday night tournament deals, and man, as a little kid, having your older cousin take you, you thought you were big stuff. I mean, I can still absolutely. There's a little lake just to the south of us, Hillsdale, and it's kind of it's a good crappie lake around here. But I think a lot of people kind of they sleeper on it a little bit for bass fishing. But I can remember the very first tournament he took me to, which was a little Thursday nighter, and had a little rattle trap that I foul hooked. And as I was bringing in that rattle trap, foul hooked basically on its side, that bass came up and hit it. And that was the first fish I ever got to weigh in at a tournament. And I guarantee you, when that happened, man, I was like, I here I am, 40 years old, and I was probably all of 9 years old, and I can still see that fish in my head. And that's what fishing does to you. I mean, you remember fish, and you remember, unfortunately, some of the ones that broke your heart, but you also remember those milestone. And to me, that was like that was it. That was the start of an addiction. And there's a lot of things that are worse in the world to get addicted to. I stay out of the bars, I stay out of the gambling, but I can't help it. I got to be out there fishing. And that really, to me, was that starting point of, yeah, I can't. I always joke around. I'm like, what do people do who don't fish? Like I play a little golf. I play a little church league softball. I get those, but when people are like, "So fishing, you fish," and I'm like, it's kind of like saying, "So you breathe." Yeah, sure do. I mean, I just don't, But that to me was that moment of, yeah, I'm hooked, line and sinker on it. So.
Hmm. It's funny because your story is kind of similar to my story. It's like fishing over in Jersey down in Vineland when I was in college, and I'll never forget the first fish I caught. It was on a frog, topwater, and the minute that fish bit that frog, I was hooked. That was it. Like I was
Yep.
like, this is the coolest thing ever. But you actually, your hooked story, if you will, was during a tournament. And how much different is it tournament fishing than it is just fun fishing?
You know, at that point, I certainly didn't really distinguish it because, you know, when you're a kid and you're that young, and I don't, I guess I've always kind of been an old soul, but I can't say I absolutely had a concept of money that early on, where you had money on the line. Um, I think I've almost come full circle on that because, like, now, the leagues that I fish and, the Midwest tournaments I fish, you do have to understand that, it's not fun fishing. It is different because you do have money on the line. You've got sponsors who have had faith enough in you to put up money. You realize, I mean, especially heck in this economy. I mean, if ever there's been a lesson in a dollar and the meaning of what it is, you got to look at right now at how much more that dollar means. Because I mean, a couple years back, maybe they had a little bit of disposable income. Now it's we're stretching it to try to get you something, and so I take that to heart, and it does make you fish a little bit differently. But I think through fishing in the opens, I also had that realization within myself. I don't have that. Like, okay, right now, where my dreams would be have altered a little bit. I, I don't want to be an Elite Series angler. I don't. I couldn't. Um, I had the pleasure of fishing with Joey C. Fuentes, Cowboy. Super nice guy. Such a nice guy in the world. But as we're talking, and we're talking about the fact that his wife's a teacher, and we're talking about the fact that he's, this was pre him making the Elites. This is him still trying to get there. And I'm kind of sitting there listening to him going, I don't have this. I mean, I don't have that cutthroat of a fish is going to determine whether my family eats or not. That's something different in your brain. And as much as I love fishing and as much as I want to, I'd love to make it to a classic. That's what I really want to do. I would love to be able to I kind of almost get emotional. I'd love to have my kid have that on a DVD somewhere saying, Dad walked across the ultimate stage. But I also want him to always know Dad was here for me. Dad was able to make it to my ball games. Dad was able to, be there for those miles. You can't, because when you're on the elite series, when you're at that upper echelon of the sport, MLF, elite, whatever, that's your job. And it's almost, I'd say it's kind of almost akin to like being deployed in the military, because you're gone so much and you are out there and you are fighting that fight, because that is how you make it. And there is no safety net, and there is no, oh, you didn't catch him, well, you're a nice guy, so we'll throw you. No, you are, it is the ultimate, you earn it. And as much as I would love to say in my heart of hearts, I would think maybe I could do that, where my situation in life is right now, that just ain't there. But that being said, I also think that's a really important lesson in life that I can give to especially some of the young anglers who are in my classes. I've done, after school fishing clubs, things like that, and let them know, listen, every everybody's feeling about where they should be fishing is their own, and that is the way it should be. I mean, I've heard people talk about religion as, oh, well, you're a cafeteria Christian, or you're gonna pick and choose what you want. In a lot of ways, I guess I'm kind of a cafeteria fisherman, in that I know what's right for me. I know where my competitive juices are, but I'm also rational and logical enough to say, yeah, but I don't, I'm not there. I'm not where those elite are. I feel like, you and I were in the ICast booth, as a matter of fact, at the same time Harvey Horn came up. Harvey is
Yep. Yeah.
one of the most decent people you will ever meet. Harvey is one of the nicest men you will ever meet. And I think Harvey has to kind of switch something in his brain when he goes out there to be that, I don't know. I don't know if stone cold killer is the right, but I mean, you got to have that mentality of, this is my job, and God bless him because he has that ability. I don't have that. But would I love to walk across the same stage at a Bassmaster Classic? Yeah, I would. Do I want to be there? Can I devote all my resources and my passions and my life into that? Right now, I can't.
I think that's super fair, right? I mean, being self-aware too, and then also taking a look at like the formats of these different tournaments. It's tough. It's tough for a guy who's teaching, and to have to support their family, to take the time out of their day and fish all 9 opens, right? Like that's a tough thing to do.
Exactly.
Like, borderline
Exactly. I mean,
impossible.
well, I don't know. I don't know. I've heard it from a lot of different pros, and I've heard it at a lot of different, gatherings, but I think it's very true. If you want to become a millionaire in fishing, you better start out a billionaire. I mean, there's that very elite air of those, KVDs and those,
Hmm.
Poliniks and those Gerald Swindles that are able to make enough to sport. And, that would be dream. But I also think at some point in time you gotta be able to say, and I don't say it with any regret, but I say, you know what? Maybe what I'm building towards is for my kid to be able to do that. To me, if I can keep, again, that dream of the classic alive, great. But even if I can kind of keep my connections, if I can keep building, if I can keep putting the Holtz name out there, if my son later on wants to go to college on a fishing scholarship, or if he wants to get involved in team stuff, as much as my dad has been a huge part of my life, he does not understand tournament angling. And I feel like if I'm there for him to make it just that much easier, great. And you know what? If he ends up wanting to go out and play baseball or golf or nothing at all, that's all fine too. And I'm very cognizant of that, not wanting to push him, because I've seen the other side of when
Yeah.
somebody's pushed, they don't want to do it anymore. But if I can hang in there and make it to where maybe before he gets married and has kids, if he could be that next, Jordan Lee who comes up through the ranks and is able to get out there and fish an elite series, my God, I'd be more happy for that than I ever would for myself. I would. I mean, I'm just being very honest. That to me would make me so much happier than if I could be an elite. It would blow my mind. It would be the greatest thing ever.
Right, that'd be pretty cool to see him walk across the classic stage for sure. I mean, I know you want to do it,
That
but
would.
it'd be cool to see your son do it for sure.
I'm so hokey about it too. Like, I've made some really great friends in bass, and this last year at the Classic down in Tennessee, I was going actually kind of behind the scenes to go meet Mike Sukon, and buddy of mine and I are down there, and Mike comes out to meet us, and he's like, "Well, there's the stage. You want to touch it?" And I went up there and I literally hovered my hand like a quarter inch, and I said, "Nope, I sure don't. If I'm gonna touch that stage, I want to be walking across it." And my buddy's like, "Nope, I'm touching it." But I get hinky about that kind of thing because I'm just like, I want that to be, if God has that in His plan for me to make it there someday, and I can do that, I want all the emotion of this is the first time I touch that stage. It's like it's hollowed ground to me. It really is.
No, absolutely. And you got started bass fishing later in life, correct? Like, how old were you about when you got started?
No, yes and no. I mean, honestly, fishing my whole life. I mean, I've literally got a picture of me at 2 years old and my son at 2 years old at the exact same pond holding a fish that's almost identical. And I mean, as far as fishing and bass fishing, I've been doing that ever since then.
Or how about like
As far as
tournament fishing? My bad.
tournaments, I really got seriously into tournaments probably when I was about 28, 29. So, I mean, that I can remember being in my last year of my master's degree at K-State and somebody putting up a sign up on the wreck that said, "We're trying to get together a bass club." And I was like, man, that's awesome. But I was like literally months away from graduating. And now K-State's gone and won, 3 national tournaments on the college level. And kids are getting scholarships to go fish. And I'm like, I missed it. I literally missed it by like a year. But, that's just the way it is. But as far as actually competitive, these kids who are now young fishing in these huge tournaments, they have a whole new level that I didn't have, and I had to gain that quick, and I had to play catch up. And shoot, now it's like I see these, at 40, they make me feel like I'm 80 because there are these kids coming up, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, you fishing the tournament?" "Yes, sir." And I'm like, "Oh, that sir hit with a thud." I mean, it's like, "Yeah, Grandpa, we sure are." And I mean, I don't feel like I'm that old, and there's the Clark Windlets and guys who, look at Rick Clunn. My God. I mean, the man's going to go on to be 110 and still win at some Florida tournament. But, I mean, the thing of it is, I don't feel that way until I look at the eyes of some of these young kids and I'm like, oh my God, I'm that old man now. And it's just funny to me. It is. I don't find it depressing at all. I just find it funny. But yeah, I definitely, I've not been tournament fishing for 40 years. I've more been really hard tournament fishing for about 12.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is crazy. And you fish the opens, right? Like you fish the one open. Where was that
at? In Mississippi is where we were, and and that was the big eye opener to me. I think that I'm so glad I did it. And if I do it again, I will definitely have some different ideas around what I'm looking to do. But honestly, I think probably the thing that it hit me the hardest was, you goofball, they're all out there doing the same exact thing. Like, I kind of felt like, I don't know, I felt like the stigma of like, oh, well, I'm probably not good enough to go out there and do this. And then I got in the boat with the guy on the first day, and I'll be honest with you, I was kind of like, okay. I mean, it was kind of one of those eye-opening moments of like, this guy has boat troubles just like I do. This guy is fishing, kind of a lot, quite frankly, junkier than what I do sometimes. And I'm like, and then day two pairing with Joey, that was awesome because I got to be in there with somebody who was actually, a obviously has proven out to be a pro. And I don't know, there's something snobbish about that, and I don't mean it to be, but let's face it, there is a big difference between that level and the level of what I fished at day one. And you know again, this is going to sound terribly snobbish, but I'm like, I think I could be there because honestly, the conversations that Joey and I had while we were out there, it inspired me to be like, yeah, this is doable. This is something that I can do. The problem becomes when the economy tanks and you don't have those funds, and the little bounces in life that go one way or the other, and you go, well, you know what? I'm not going to mortgage my house to go out there and, like you said, fish to the elite. But I absolutely will be back out there and doing it again because there's no measuring stick like what you get with that, to where you can literally see a Gerald Swindle and you can see, these Daryl Gleason, all these stars that you kind of feel like but now I'm fishing right side by side with them on the same water, and let's prove it. Let's see who's got something in the live well at the end of the day, and that's awesome. That is a phenomenal thing.
Business owners and marketing professionals in the Philly area, Bad Rhino takes the overwhelm out of digital marketing. With tailored digital marketing services, from social media management to SEO and PPC advertising, our expert team navigates the complexities of the digital ad space for your business. Let Bad Rhino lead you to success. Visit badrhinoinc.com and let's take your business to new heights. Bad Rhino, we do digital marketing so you don't have to.
Yeah, it's pretty cool because it takes me back to one of my past episodes where I talked to a young guy who made the elites this year, and he was like, I was like, how did it feel like fishing next to all these like pros that have been established for a long time? He's like, dude, to be honest with you, at first I was super nervous. And then I realized once the boat launched, once I called my number, I'm like, oh, it's just fishing. This is what I've been doing my whole life, and just getting after it.
And I can dangerously get on a soapbox here, and I will not, but I will tell you, one of the things that I love, and I mean love, about fishing is, with all the crap that goes on in the world right now, a fish doesn't know what color you are. It doesn't know how rich or poor you are. It doesn't know anything about you. All it's doing is reacting to a bait that you either threw in the right place, the wrong place, or got lucky where you threw it. And when you can kind of gamesmanship that and say, you know what, my knee might be too blown out to go play basketball against somebody, or my back's too bad to go out and, play a round of golf against, Rory, but I'm still able to go out there and fish, and I feel like I will be able to still be competitive for a very long time. And again, as long as you can keep it together enough to keep a worm on your hook and get out there, you got as good a chance as anybody else, as long as you can kind of outsmart the rest of the field on what they're doing, or get lucky enough to put it where it needs to be. And there is a moniker of luck, but you can't just leave it all to luck. You got to be able to have a game plan, and you got to be able to kind of figure out, this is where I need to be, and feel confident within that. And I think that's a big part of that game, is you got to be confident that even if you don't know what those fish are thinking, you got to fool yourself into thinking you know what those fish are thinking.
That's the truth. I've never thought about fishing like that. Like, fish don't discriminate. They don't care. They don't care if you're fishing a tournament, if you're fun fishing. They don't care the color of your skin, nothing like that. It's literally, can you put the bait on the fish?
It is the fairest thing in the world. There's no umpire that's got a grudge against you. There is no, my parents didn't have the money to buy me the fancy shoes, therefore I couldn't do it. There's none of that. To me, fishing it's the purest of sports, because you are out there and it's you and it's the fish, and let's go. And that's what it is. It's great.
Absolutely. So you are a social studies teacher for the last 16
I
years.
am. I
Um,
am.
so you said you got some clubs or different stuff going on with the kids and kind of helping them out get started in the fishing, or
Yeah, so I had an extremely well developed one. So let's see here. Pandemic year. Um, Everything changed. Like the ability, obviously, the whole world changed, and I still look back on it and go, wow, we really just like shut down the world for, the flu for a couple of months there, or almost a year there. But there were all these murmurings of we're going to be online forever. We're never going to see kids back in a classroom again. I just couldn't be a part of that. And again, I'm not. I'm. You can get me political and you can get me on a soapbox. I won't do that. But to me, that was not the right move, and I wasn't going to be a part of that. I was not going to be a part of trying to halfway educate kids through a computer, because as nice as it is you and me talking right now, and this is great, it ain't the same as you and me in a room being able to talk through things. It's just not. And so I left, and that was after, let's see, 13 years of teaching. And I left and I worked for Garmin for a year. Loved it, but it wasn't teaching, and so I went back. At my former school, I had a very, very pre-COVID, very established club where I had about 25 boys and girls and a good mix of each, who got, to me, some of the best experience in the world. I mean, they got to talk to Mike Sukon. They they got to talk to Ronnie Moore. Easy for me to say. They got to talk to Brandon Polnick. They got to talk to all kinds of different local anglers and got to figure out, and I had folks who literally had never tied on a hook before and learned how to tie a knot, to kids who were, I think I might want to maybe do this in college someday. How do I get there, Mr. Holtz? And, we did everything from learning how to tie knots. We learned how to, cast and pick out a backlash and all those things. We learned about fish species. We learned about safety. We learned about stewardship. And then we also learned how to put a resume together. We learned how to give a handshake and look somebody in the eye. And, the thing of it is that you can say all you want, oh, the world's changing, and it is. Trust me, it's a very different world than it was 5 years ago. But for a lot of folks in the fishing community, especially the folks who have the bucks in the fishing community who might want to sponsor you, they tend to be even a little bit older than me, and still looking someone in the eye and shaking their hand firmly and saying, here's my paper resume. That still resonates. A lot of folks go, well, how do you get all these sponsors? How do you, because I work hard at it. There's a lot of rejection out there that I will just say, you know what, maybe later. And that's something that I try to instill in those kids. Now, coming back from COVID, it was a little bit dicier, because there, even when we were back in school, limited numbers in the classroom, how many people can be in a place together with not being 6 foot apart. I think it was there for the kids that they wanted to be a part of it, but we weren't quite sure how to do it. We did what I kind of consider to be a let's get back into it type thing, where I had about 5 or 6 kids who, I think it really worked out well for them as far as being able to learn about it. But I really would like to kick it into that next year and get back to kind of that normalcy that we were pre-COVID, where maybe we could do some, some boys and girls club type interactions that are a little bit more where I'd love to be, where we can get back together as a fishing community and start working on some of those things again. But to me, it's extremely rewarding to be able to see some of these. Let's face it, some of these kids that I've had, family life isn't good at home. Maybe they don't have a male figure in their life. Maybe they don't have a parent, and they see something where they want to go fish, and maybe they even come in thinking, oh, I just want to catch a bluegill. But at the end of the day, they figure out this is something I can do for the rest of my life. So that's a really cool feeling. And it's also something that I think helps to bridge that gap, because I think sometimes that kid comes into a core class, whether it be math or reading or social studies or whatever it is, and maybe they don't have a great love for that, but if you can bridge that connection through sports, whether that's football, baseball, whatever it might be, fishing, where you can do that, I think then they start to pay attention to you a little bit more and say, maybe this is something I should listen to, because this guy, he's kind of goofy. He tells some dad jokes, and he'll keep on going with the assignment, and it's not quite the torture maybe they thought it was beforehand. And I think that opening that door of a commonality of, oh, you like to fish, I like to fish. Maybe I'm a little bit on the troubled side. Maybe I don't have the best attendance record. Maybe I've had some. Well, maybe all that's true, but I like to fish and you like to fish. So let's focus on what we have as a commonality, and we'll worry about those differences later. And I think we need more of that in life, for that matter.
Absolutely. That's so true. And I wasn't in high school too long ago. I actually just graduated college a couple years back. And first off, the online thing, I know this podcast is online. It sucks. It's not the same. Second thing is, when you can make a connection with the teacher, whether, like, I played baseball in high school, and like the teachers that were like into baseball and they knew I was on a team, I'd pay more attention in their class, because I'd be like, okay, this is my guy here. Like, I'm going to actually take notes and pay attention because this guy's into the same thing as me. Have a little conversation about baseball at the end of it. So be it. But I think it's cool to, on the social studies side, yes, you are a social studies teacher, but then also share a little mix of your personality, get the kids involved, get the kids talking to other people that are into fishing too, because I'm sure you've seen it too. I got friends from high school. I got my fishing friends too on like the whole other side too. So it is cool when you can kind of combine all the aspects of high school in the one, with it be teacher, fishing. I mean, just way better situation for the kids, for sure.
Well, and honestly, even with the faculty, I always laugh, because like my fishing friends who know me really well, they're like, I just don't know how you're a teacher. I don't know how you put up with the personalities of the kids. I don't know how you put up with the other staff that seems so different minded than you. I just can't picture you in a teacher's lounge talking to other teachers. But on the other side, when I am in that teacher's lounge, or if I am, I think a lot of times those either students or teachers, they're like, so wait a minute, you're telling me next weekend you're in Oklahoma on Grand Lake, and you'll be back by Monday, but you can't understand how I can keep it together in the field of teaching. And then, on the other end, it's so many of my teacher friends that are like, they don't understand what tournament fishing is. And the fact that I'm on a boat for 8 hours trying to catch 5 fish, they're like, that blows their mind. And then beyond that, they're like, so people pay you to do this? And I'm like, yeah, believe it or not, I talk them into it. So anyway.
It's definitely a pretty cool situation, because like not a lot of people, well, there's a lot of fishermen that are aware of like the professional circuit, but not a lot of like overall people are aware of it. And I think it's really cool to kind of spread that awareness too. And it's like when people look at you in the school, be like, oh, that's John, that's the professional fisherman and teacher.
Yeah.
There he is.
Yeah. I still always think that, and they'll throw that, professional fisherman. And I just always feel kind of funny. I mean, it's weird, because I do make money fishing, and I do have sponsors who I dearly love. I mean, our local liquor store, Moonlight Liquor, he came up in such a big way. This is the first year he's been my primary sponsor, and it's all because the economy has sucked so much. And yet, believe it or not, liquor stores are still pretty much in business and going strong. And he believes in me and says, this is a great way of advertising. So, shout out Joe at Moonlight Liquors. But beyond that, like my folks who sponsor me from the standpoint of, Bass Reaper, getting the great baits in my hand, all that stuff. I feel like it is my responsibility to say, yeah, I'm professionally fishing for them. But then inside my head, I'm like, I don't know. It's kind of a weird moniker to be, I hear people, I'm on pro staffs and I'm, professionally fishing. Well, that word pro has a lot of different incantations to it. And I guess it never bothers me when people have an understanding of what that means. It's the people who don't and just throw it around flippantly that bothers me, because there's way too many people who work way too hard for people to assign a pro to somebody who gets a 10% discount on a fishing rod. That's not a pro, but I'm not sure I'm a pro either, but I try to be professional for all the folks who have been nice enough to believe in me, and I certainly believe right back in them.
I love that. And actually the liquor store your local liquor store is actually a nice segue into like the next question I have here, and that being, what's it like fishing in Kansas City and KC, like that local kind of area around there? Is it good fishing out there?
There's great fishing. I wish there was better bass fishing. We've got, again, you're going to get me political here. We've got a state house that I think could take a lot of lessons from Missouri, from Arkansas, from Oklahoma, and the fact that we don't put the money and resources into bass fishing the way we should. And instead, and again, my opinion here, I'll catch heat from local guys and local guides and everything else. We put a bunch of money into stripers and wipers and catfish. And I mean, listen, I'm no dummy. That's a big part of the economy too. People come into catfish at Milford Lake. That's our largest lake here. It's about 3 hours from where I'm sitting right now. People will come into crappie fish at Hillsdale. There aren't a lot of people who are coming in to bass fish in Kansas, especially when we are just, a few hours away from Table Rock, and we're a few hours away from Oklahoma's great fisheries. I mean, Lake Tenkiller and the Red River and, Grand, obviously. It's different. I think you've got to kind of eke out your place. And I think if you are going to be that fisherman who wants to go out and, for example, fish the Opens, I think you got to get out of your comfort zone, because fishing here in Kansas will absolutely lead you in areas that I think a lot of people like in the South won't understand. We get a lot of chocolate milk here. That's the bottom line. There are very few clear lakes. You got to go to Table Rock or you got to go to Stockton to find clear water. But there is a cool thing that has changed over the last few years in that, again, controversial, zebra mussels have become much more invasive, and all of a sudden we have smallmouth. And that's not something we had when I was a kid. And I know, there are so many Karens. I was actually out at my local lake just the other day with my wife, and Grandma watched Brogan and my son, and we were out there fishing. And she saw my boat. And I could tell, you just get that feeling. And she, nice enough, but she goes, "Boy, those are some fancy stickers on your boat." And I said, "Well, yeah, I guess so." I said, "I fish all over the Midwest." "Well, I wash everything off. We don't have the zebra mussels here," which they've only had for 5 years, but we don't have the zebra mussels here, and we sure don't. And I'm like, lady, the fishery is probably better because of the zebra mussels. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I realize the Corps of Engineers, their struggle with it and everything else, but the fact of the matter is, our lakes have gotten better, cleaner, clearer. There are actually lakes where you can get 2-3 foot visibility in Kansas now you never had before those feeders. So the ecosystem has changed, and I'm not a scientist. I'm not going to tell you what the long term, maybe we'll find out that zebra mussels really are the death of all of us, but for right now I'm catching smallmouth and some big ones, and that's cool. And that's something that was not here when I was a kid. You had to go to Table Rock to catch smallmouth. You had to go other places to catch walleye. You had to go other places to be able to experience that feel of what a lot of places just are. Now we've got that in Kansas, and that's a cool thing. I wish that our largemouth were stepping up like the others are. We've got a few fisheries who have some monster largemouth in them, but we're right here in that tipping point where we're too south to be north and we're too north to be south. And it's just, those largemouth just don't like that bubble living. They just don't.
No, I totally feel that being from Philadelphia. I do. It's like literally like smack dab in the middle, and you're just like, we don't know if we're smallmouth fisheries out here, or we don't know if we're largemouth. We're kind of neither. So.
Right. Well, and I can tell you, a smallmouth here in Kansas is a totally different critter than it is in Tennessee, or it is in Minnesota, or it is in Ontario, Canada. They are, to me, they are like, I don't know. There's a lot of big hunters around. Kansas is more known for hunting. Yep. And you think about like the different turkeys, you think about the Rio turkey turkeys and you think about the different breeds, and they're all turkeys, but they're all totally a different breed. To me, that's how smallmouth are. A smallmouth on the Tennessee River has nothing even close to in common to what a smallmouth here has, other than they look a heck of a lot alike. They don't behave the same. They don't.
No, completely different. And I kind of got that glimpse up there when I was at the St. Lawrence that we were talking a little bit off air about. Those smallmouth are just completely different up there than anything I've ever fished. So
yeah,
it's
for
insane.
sure.
But John, let's wrap this up here. I want to ask you what your PB largemouth and PB smallmouth is.
Okay, so I'm going to be very honest with you and tell you, I don't exactly know largemouth from this standpoint. My buddy, who lives in Florida of all places now, came up. We fished a local lake, and all day long he talks trash on, oh, well, largemouth fishing, whatever. The scales that I put it on showed it at over 6.5 pounds. However, when I got back to the house and this is a few years ago, so we don't have exactly as fancy as scales, my scale was totally off. So I got to kind of guesstimate it and say it was right at that 9 pounds, right about 9. Because people who've seen pictures of it, everything else, are like, oh, I don't think it was a 10 pounder, but it was every bit of 9. Largest smallmouth is at 6.